this looks good.
Oh my god, this is delicious.
I definitely want to taste that.
Real. All right, guys. So now we are moving into our plate of the day. We need you, Uncle Sam says. But what is it like to be black in the military? Oh, Adiza, and please give me your proper title. What is your proper? If I was in the shits, what would I be referring to you as?
I am Sergeant First Class Jabril.
So what is this first class? Because I know sergeant, but like, what does it mean to be a first class sergeant?
So I'm just going to briefly explain the rank structure, because if you don't really live in this world, you don't know what any of that means. But so I'm an enlisted member. I'm not an officer. Those tend to be commanders. But enlisted members go from the rank of private all the way up to sergeant major. So E1 to E9. The rank you're familiar with, sergeant, would be E5, and that's the beginning of the NCO corps, basically. I'm sorry, my dog is doing something weird, but she's fine. So yeah, E5 is the rank of sergeant. So I'm in E7, sergeant first class. The rank in between, the rank I just moved up from, was staff sergeant. So I came into the military as an E4, as a specialist. And I joined with a bachelor's degree. So joining with a bachelor's degree generally would grant you that rank. So you get to skip a couple levels on the junior leadership. So once you hit NCO, non-commissioned officer, that's generally like you're coming into real leadership roles, essentially. So I joined the Army band, and so when you join the special bands, you join as an E4 at first, and you spend a couple of months as an E4, and then you rank up to E6. So I was a staff sergeant for 7 years, and I just recently got promoted to sergeant first class.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's incredible. But before all this, because I tell you, when Skittles had mentioned that you were in the military for the first time, and that was new information for me, I was like, "Oh, really?" And I was like, she's like,
but I love it. I always refer back to Cadet Kelly, because that's literally like the image that you get when you see, if you see Adiza on Instagram versus Adiza when she's like in her like ACUs or
OCPs,
yeah, all like her fucking costume and shit, like her uniform.
Right.
It's too different. Like, it's so funny to see, but yeah, I'm sorry. I always think about Cadet Kelly.
No, I just mean that to say, like, it took me aback, because when he said military at first, the first thing I thought was like, oh, she's going to war, like she's on the battlefield, and then he's like, oh no, she's in the choir. And I was like,
oh my god, it's so funny, because
I was just like,
because you can hear me saying it. Nah, she's in the choir.
I just had this conversation with my grandmother, because when I was telling her about getting picked up for promotion and everything, and she was like, we were talking about it. She's like, I'm so proud of you. And when I first heard that you were joining the Army, she like panicked. And she was like, she figured I was, going to be deploying and stuff. And she was shocked. A lot of people were shocked when I said I was joining the Army and the military in general, because if you knew me, like, no one saw that coming. Again, no plans, just vibes. Okay, like, just feeling it out day to day. And so I just kind of ended up on this particular ride. But the military was never an aspiration or a plan of mine ever at all whatsoever. So yeah, this shocked a lot of people.
Yeah, but what is that story like? Because you literally fell into it. Like,
yeah, I was gonna say, what was your relationship with the military and perception of the like before you even started? And then I'm eager to hear the story. Yeah.
So, when I was an undergrad, the person I was dating at the time, their mother was in the band. She was a singer as well. And I, at the time had no aspirations. I had no desire to really join the military or to join the Army bands or anything, or the military bands. But I just knew that it was an option, which generally is kind of interesting to me, because I'm like, well, that doesn't mean that means that there's a whole, like, you shouldn't have to be dating somebody to know that like this avenue exists, But around the time to graduate, senior year came, and an audition was opening up. A spot opened up, so we were having auditions. And she had been like, "Oh, you need to audition. You need to audition." I was just like, "I don't know about the military. I don't think so." And I kept just kind of putting it off. And then like graduation was really coming around. I was like, "Damn, I got to do some auditions. Like, I got a job." And so I just took this audition. I sent in a packet and got called back. And I was like, I did not expect to win it. I was like, I'm just here again for the vibes. I was like, to see what happens, to get some more audition experience under my belt. Lo and behold, I won. So that day I had to like call my parents and be like, so I got a job. I have to join the army though. And they were just like, everybody was just like, what the hell is going on? Like, what is going on? And I was like, okay, good question. Let me. And yeah, and basically when I, kind of like laid it all on the table, basically the Army, all the military branches essentially have bands. Like the Army has a bunch of division bands, like bands all over the country and all over the world. And that's a different MOS, it's a different job title, 42 Romeo. But then all the military branches have special bands that are stationed in and around the DC area. And we're permanently stationed. So like the division bands, like they move a bunch, like they kind of live like the more traditional Army lifestyle, like every 2 or 3 years you're picking up your PCSing, you're going somewhere else. The special bands are basically a bit more professionalized. Everybody, like the level of musicianship, the level is a little bit higher because you are expected to come in at a certain level of musicianship already. It's what gets us the rank that we do so quickly. It's why we skip over so many people to go straight to special, straight to E6. Like generally in the Army, that would take you about 10 years to get to E6.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like we don't, after we go to basic training, there's normally like AIT. So that's where you would go ship off to learn your job. We don't do that. We go straight to work. So most of us come right to our units. Most of us come in with at least a bachelor's degree. Many of us have music degrees. Not everybody. It's not a requirement, but it's just kind of the norm. So because we come in with a certain level of experience already, and the Army doesn't have to spend a bunch of money to teach you how to do your job.
Yeah.
You come with a certain level of expertise, so they kind of rank you as such. So the lowest rank in the special bands is E6. You go from E6 to E9. All the conductors, they are the officers. So they move around every few years. But we, as the enlisted, as the musicians, we are permanently stationed. So I've been stationed here in Virginia, right outside DC, for the past 7 years, which is very long. Stationed in one place. In the rest of, like, that's unheard of in the rest of the military, but it's like kind of the only place where you can basically do your job and like be in the same place the length of your career, 20, 30 years, as long as you stay.
Yeah. What's basic training look like for you? Like, were you doing physical stuff?
Oh yeah. No, we go to basic, like whenever.
So you know how to shoot a gun, fuck out of here.
I learned all about the M16, the saw, like all of that. I was in basic training with all these other soldiers, generally like 17 and 18-year-old. I was 21 when I went to basic, which is still young, but I felt so old because everyone around me was like fresh out of high school. My best friend, my battle at basic was, she's now a staff sergeant. I think she just got promoted to E6, Staff Sergeant Hamilton. But she was 35. She had turned 35 in basic. She was from Brooklyn. We shipped together and we were like thick as thieves the whole time because we were like, these kids are crazy. So it's me and you, okay? Like, yeah. But you're in there with all these, younger kids basically coming in fresh out of high school, and you're doing everything that they do. You are up at 4 or 5 in the morning, doing PT in the morning, ruck marches, learning to shoot weapons, learning customs and courtesies, learning drill and ceremony, all that Cadet Kelly stuff.
Yeah. And speaking of Cadet Kelly, I wrote you a letter and put glitter in it and almost got you in trouble, right?
Oh, guy, almost. He sent me, so I still have all these letters. I still have, like, that's one of my favorite possessions. Like, I have a whole big old envelope of all the letters I got sent, because you don't have your phone. You don't have your phone for 9-10 weeks, essentially. So letters are like your lifeline. Like, getting mail at the end of the day was like, oh, it was like the best part of the day. And like, when mail came and you didn't get any mail, it was like always kind of a bummer. But I usually got mail because I had so many people writing me. I had Skittles writing me, and my parents and my friends and my ex at the time. Like, I had just so many people writing me all the time. And so he sent me a letter that was full of glitter, and I opened it on my freshly made bed, drill sergeant approved bed. And I'm just like, oh, letter.
No.
And I know he sent it because he had a joke about like, every girl deserves to sparkle.
Yup.
That's what he wrote. And I know he thought he was being so sweet. And I like opened it and I was like, I'm gonna kill him when I get out of here. Can't wait to kill him.
And did you get in trouble?
No, I somehow, me and him, I was like, we gotta get this glitter off this bed right now. Both of us just like shake out the blanket, sweep, flip the blanket over.
Crazy.
Listen, it's all about the memories.
Truly, I mean, basic training is funny. Like, I tell people now when they're going, especially like when you're joining the band, it's like, just think of it, you got to get through it, and then you come here, you get to do your crazy, cool, glamorous at times job. But you come out of it, it's character building, and you come out of it with stories that you can dine out on for the rest of your life.
So you talk, it's so interesting to me when I hear people talk about the military with so much love and stuff. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your first impressions being in the space, and like how maybe some of what you perceived of the military changed over time.
Oh yeah. You know, when I was first considering joining and like going through the process, I was like, what does this mean? And I think I had a very like, there's not a lot of military history background in my family. One of my uncles served in the Navy, and he was always very proud of his service, you know? It's like a big part of who he is. But aside from him, like, I had never really known anybody who had served and not served like recently. And I think I had this idea in my head. I think patriotism and nationalism have become like one and the same. We've gotten very wrapped up in each other in this country. And so unfortunately, like the military tends to be co-opted by a lot of like some of the worst people, frankly, in this country, who want to speak for us, and you know, everything is support the troops and everything is, but then, you know, they go behind the troops' backs and vote for things that, you know, hurt the troops. And, you know, I think they kind of hold us up as a symbol of what it means to be American, but it's not always a very inclusive definition, if you understand what I mean. Like, it's not, and I think that's what that's a story I had in my head, that like the military, I didn't feel connected to it in any way. I didn't feel like it had anything to do with me. Because, you know, like the communities I came from, you know, Black and brown and queer and immigrant, and I just didn't feel like anything in the military, the stories that were being told in the military about the military, had much to do with where I was from and who I was from, or who I was. So going in, I was kind of nervous about that, and I was shipping off to, you know, Oklahoma to do basic training at Fort Sill. And you know, it's a part of the country coming from New York City, I've never been to, I'd never seen myself going to for any particular reason. And one of the things that I learned was like how vast the military is and how truly diverse. Like, the military as a whole, like, there are people from every walk of life. Some areas of life are a little bit more overrepresented than others, for sure. But like, the beauty of it, I think, is that like it really does encompass a lot of like what the American experience is supposed to be. Like everybody is there, Black, white, Asian, Latino, gay, you know, trans, like everybody's here. We're a small population, we're a small portion of the country, but we are very representative of the country, if that makes sense. And so that helps me, especially because my unit, which is, you know, we're working on this now. My unit's not very diverse at all. It's predominantly white men. And it's something that we're trying to address and like figure out how we get more, you know, faces of color and women like in the doors through the auditions. How do we get people to understand that like opportunities like this exist in the military? And, you know, I think about it all the time. Like when I go to work, like I'm representing y'all, you know, like I'm representing, you know, New York City. I'm representing all, you know, halal cards on the one train. And that's a story that I think, you know, when people talk about America and representing America, the real America, and I'm like, that is the real America to me, you know? And I think there's a part of us like that just means a lot to me, is like reclaiming what it means to be American. Because I think there's a dog whistle that kind of gets blown a lot when people are talking about real America and real Americans and, you know, the heartland and stuff. And I'm like, that's not my experience at all. But like, you're not going to tell me you're more American than me when I have to wear this uniform every day, you know?
Right. And I wonder, and I love that you said that about the diversity in the military, because I often sit with myself and I wonder, like, is the military actually an inclusive place? Because you think about when you were talking about how like people use the lingo in supporting troops and stuff, like when you hear the government talking about policy, and yes, I'm talking specifically about Trump and some of the, you know, fucking transphobic policies that he's tried to reinforce, I wonder, like, what makes it so easy? Like, is this system such a system that is super inclusive and it's actually a happy camp that's being misrepresented, or are there things that are problematic in the military, even outside of just like the idea of war itself, and if we should be in war and invading countries? I'm curious.
Yeah. It's not, I wouldn't go so far as to say like, oh, everything's fine here, this is the utopia, this is what, you know, this is what America's supposed to be. Like, there are significant, you know, cultural issues that we are kind of facing down every single day. And then the military is kind of, it's, you know, it's a large old culture. And I always think about like when you're trying to like imagine trying to like turn a giant yacht, you know, you're not, you know, like it's like culture change, culture shift is slow, but it is happening. It's happened since I've been in, you know, and that's something that's made me, that's been really heartening to see. And also it's, you know, as younger people keep coming in, that's one of the more interesting things. It's like the military, like younger people are its blood, are its lifeblood. You know, the youth are what keep this thing running. And so you come in with different ideas about what it means to be a person in the world. So you can't ignore it. You can't ignore them. Like I was saying before, like, that's the future. And if you don't want to get left behind, you better get right with it.
So would you say that the tone is like of the military, and I know like you're in a specific section, so it's not even like a blanket statement.
Yeah, I speak for the whole military.
Right. But is it like pro-Trump? Because I guess because of the way the image is toted, it makes it seem as though being an employee of the military, of the army, or whatever, is to subject yourself to have to be yielding to anything that is Trumpist, whether you agree to it. And I feel like that is a big conception that people have, though.
Yeah, it's a misconception. The thing about the military is an apolitical organization. We are not political. Like that, you're constantly trying to get people to understand. And then there are times we kind of get roped into things. We're like, ooh, like this is not what we're supposed to be representing, not what we do. And again, people, you know, use the military again for their own means and their own agendas. But the military itself is not a political organization. It is completely apolitical. Now we answer to our civilian leaders, and we answer to whoever is president at the time, whether you like them or not, you know, whether, you know, but again, the president is not a king, you know, and so when they try to, you know, when he did that, you know, tweet where it was like, are trans people not welcome in the military? And I'm like, that's not true. Like, we had just recently before that been having trainings about being trans in the military and like what that experience is like and how to help your, you know, trans soldiers, if you have a soldier that's transitioning, and like how to support them, and like, you know, what's kosher and what's not. And basically like that's, you know, there's the thing about the military is that there's so much bureaucracy that even though he was the commander-in-chief, like that tweet didn't undo, you know, that doesn't undo the years of people service, or it doesn't undo all that training and everything. It kind of threw us for a loop. But like, it's not, that wasn't like, oh, and this is now law. Like, and I believe it was pushed back on by the Pentagon. And yeah, but I do think it's hard when you're in and you want to like let people know, you know, who you are, who we are as people, and who we are as, you know, your service members. That we're, you know, we're not Democrat and we're not Republican. I mean, personally, you might be, you know, like your personal political views are totally valid, but like as an organization, like that's not what we're about, you know? And I think that gets kind of lost sometimes.
So then if what like if there were things that you would hope could change about the military, whether it's in your specific sector or just the organization overall, what are some of those changes?
So so I'm now on the Army Band's diversity, equity, and inclusion team. And so one of our goals, again, I touched on this earlier, but one of our goals is to get the band, the special bands in particular, to look like the rest of the Army. Because it's really kind of problematic, you know, to look at, you know, to see these, like, first of all, like I always say our jobs are some of the best kept secrets of the military, you know, like people don't know that we exist. And that's generally we do a lot of public outreach, a lot of community concerts and stuff, but we kind of exist to serve the upper leadership in the Washington area, you know?
Yeah, can you speak a little bit, actually, now that you're on that point, can you go a little deeper about, like, yes, you're in a band or in the choir, but like why does the Army even have?
So I think of our units and units like ours, like we're basically an arm of soft diplomacy, you know? And so like, it's not uncommon for us to go into, like, the chief of staff or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs will have a dinner, you know, and with diplomats and leaders, military leaders, civilian leaders from people all over the world, you know, and I don't quite know what that dinner is about or what they're discussing, but I come in there at times, or I'm called in with the Army Strings or with the Army Voices to do a quartet or something, and to kind of provide music for that meal or for that interaction, and to basically kind of soften the butter, basically, you know. We're lubing up the room, you know? And like easing any tensions or just creating a human connection, you know? And so I like to think that, you know, I don't know this, maybe I'm making my job sound more important than it is, but I like to think that maybe there are wars that we prevent. When people come and they hear their national anthem sung so beautifully at them, you know, or they're, you know, we are singing and then we get other people to sing along with us, and to have this like moments of like human connection, you know, with these heads of state, you know? You know, maybe that's a conflict that we manage to avoid now, because there's been an element of humanity brought into the room, where it's not just all about, you know, the uniform and, you know, and the conflicts that arise. Yeah, so we, you know, we're also an arm of like community outreach about like connecting the community to the Army, you know, so that when people see, you know, soldiers, but not just visuals of like soldiers holding weapons, you know, or, you know, diving out of helicopters and stuff, but like holding a microphone or holding a car, like that's something that people can relate to, you know. And then it's like, they're people just like us. And not only are they people, they're experts, they're professionals at what they do, you know, like they're not just like Joe Schmoes that we just pull off the road and we're like, here, have a guitar, hope it sounds good. Like, no, when you come and see us, you're gonna, oh, they're really good.
Mm-hmm.
Do there. And does that mean that they're also really good at everything else? All these other jobs? Like, is that the level of training that is, you know, the level of excellence that is expected of, you know, that we can come to expect of our military? And so that's kind of, you know, that's, you know, one of the many reasons, but I think those are some of the most important. It's really about building community relationships and then building, like, helping facilitate relationships and communicate certain things about our culture and about who we are to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I wish that you guys were able to do things like what I had the pleasure of having Adiza visit my classroom one year, and she actually visited like my worst class, but that ended up being the one class that had a student of mine who they used to call him Army Bound, because like he was just like dead set about going to the army. And then I remember as he grew older, there was some reason, I don't know if it was eyesight or something, was like said that was not going to be the path that he was going to go on. But I still even was encouraging him to look into like the army band and stuff like that, because that was the first time that he was exposed to this idea that he could follow that career path, go into the army and still do something that he really was passionate about, which was music. Because you don't hear about that at all, especially when, you know, you're a high school in the South Bronx, and they do send the recruiters there, but they're not advertising.
Well, often the recruiters don't even know about,
yeah.
They might know about division bands and stuff, but like the special bands. And I think it's really important, again, the diversity aspect too, is like, it doesn't look great when one of your, I hesitate to say better, but frankly, better opportunities that the military has to offer. If you want a relatively stable life as a creative, as a musician, like a lot of my colleagues, like we have, you know, we buy homes in the area, you can build a family here, you're not subject to like having to pick up and move every 2 and 3 years. And so you get a certain amount of stability where you can teach on the outside, you can gig on the outside, as long as you meet your Army obligations. The rest of the time, your life is yours to kind of use and mold as you want, which is a little, frankly, a little bit different than the, you know, it's not a typical military experience at all. So when people ask me, like, what's it like to be in the Army? I'm like, I am not the example. I'm not the exception to the rule. I can tell you about my experience. But it doesn't look great, I don't think, when most of these opportunities, it looks like most of these opportunities go to white men. You know, and then it's like, oh, but the rest of the Army looks like us, you know, like, you know, and
even watching that like promotional ceremony when you did get promoted to Sergeant First Class, you were the only Black woman and you were the only person of color in the whole lineup. So I don't know, I look forward to your influence being that brings more diversity onto that stage so that we have more Black Sergeant First Classes.
Is working hard. We're trying really, and it's going to be, like I said, it's not going to be like an overnight. I think there's a lot of like, I think now that we're kind of having these cultural conversations in cultural institutions across the country, right? Like diversity is suddenly really important. And it's like, we want to see more faces of color like today or tomorrow, like how but these kind of cultural changes are slow, you know, and it's continuous work, and it's going to be generational work. It'll probably, you know, I'm hoping that things by the time I retire look very different than they do now. I don't expect them to look completely different tomorrow, next month, or even next year, but I'm hoping, you know, when I hit 20 years and I'm ready to move on to something else, that I leave something behind me that's like, all right, this is, we're making good progress.
And talk a little bit about that. So, because that was the question that we like sidetracked from, with like, what if you could change something, what would you hope to see change?
Yeah, I frankly, I just want to see more faces of color in the special band programs. I want to see the special bands look like the rest of the Army. I think it is, you know, we're often, we're considered like we're told all the time we're like the ambassadors for the Army, we're ambassadors for the American people. And I'm like, cool, then why don't we look like it? Like, why is that? Like, why do we look the way we do? This has nothing to do with the rest of the country, you know? And it's very easy for people to write off if all it looks like is just like a jam club for white boys, you know? Like, that's not the direction that the country's moving. It's not the content, I think, that many people are clamoring for right now. And so I would love to just see the bands move to really prioritize that and really, you know, not see it as like a I guess culturally, yeah, not see it as like something we have to check the box to do, because we do a ton of training in the Army. There's always something we have to train, right? We always got to do some kind of training. I don't want it to be seen as like we're checking the box. Look, we met a quota. But to see, you know, having a truly diverse ensemble, truly diverse unit as a strength, and a lack of diversity as a weakness. You know, it's for us to understand that like the mix is what's going to make you better. It's what's going to make this place stronger. It's what's going to make us more relatable. It's what's going to draw people closer to us, because more people will be able to see themselves here. Yeah.
So, should others join?
This is a kind of a good and like heavy question. I would say, I'm not going to say yes and I'm not going to say no. Joining the military is a big decision. I'm not going to pretend that like it is for everybody and that everybody should do it. I can't even speak to what the rest of the experience of the Army is really like, because my experience is so different. What I do say when people are considering it, the military is full of opportunities. If you are, you know, willing to, like, if you know where to look, if you know how you want to use your time in, and if you go in with a plan, you can get a lot out of it. You know, education benefits, housing benefits. There's just, you know, training and just broadening your resume. There's a lot that you can get out of it, but it also comes with a lot of risks and a lot of potential areas that could, I don't know, that might not benefit you. So you need to really think about what it is you want to do, what it is you want to get out of it. Is there a way that you can do what you want to do outside of the military? And if that is going to be better for you, because again, joining the military, it comes with a level of sacrifice that I can't really stress enough. Like, you're going to, at some point in time, be far away from family and friends. Your work is going to keep you from family and friends for some reason. You aren't able to do all the things your civilian friends can do, frankly. Like wear nail polish. Like, you know, there are certain things that like you're just not going to be able to move the way that you did in your civilian life. Are you willing to give certain things up? And if you are, if, you know, the sacrifices don't outweigh the benefits, and you have a clue about like where you want to take it, then like, sure. If not, if you're not quite sure exactly what that's going to look like for you or what you want to do, think on it. So I wouldn't recommend anybody just join lightly, because it's a big decision, you know, and at times it could mean your life, you know, depending on what your job is, depending on the needs of the Army. It very much could, you know, mean the ultimate sacrifice. So really you have to think very broadly, and you really need to think about your specific situation and what you need, what you want to get out of your experience. So I'm not gonna say yes, I'm not gonna say no.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, and I asked, and I talked when I was at WeWork, and I would talk about like, yeah, being in corporate America, there's like the answer for the general answer, and then there's the answer if a Black person's asking. A Black person is saying, what is the space? How do I enter it? Do I fit in? And like that honest answer. And so I think that's fair. Like, you know, it's not yes and it's not and it's not no. And I think the biggest takeaway I've gotten from what you've said today is just the way that the way media and just the narratives that we hear about the Army are so associated to politics. Makes it hard for people like me. Admittedly, I'm the person, right, who to really dive into this military culture. And even like, I support our troops, but it's like, I support the people, fuck the institution has always been my mentality. It's like, I have family that is of this institution. So like I love these people, and like the same way I have family, other people have family. You know, they're just fucking civilians here. It's the institution, and so I struggle so much, and I always wonder, like, is the army an institution that's taking care of Black people? Like, you know, like, are they doing a good job with us? But it also sounds like you're in such a particular area that's, and even in thinking about what I'm talking about, a lot of those times I'm talking about people who are literally like at war, in the battlefield, and like the conditions of war and PTSD. And that's not to say that there's no room for people in other departments to experience some of that, but I'm saying like my relationship, once I think army, I think somebody in the middle of a fucking battle,
Right. And like
not getting taken care of, and that's all I think about. So it becomes difficult for me to hear this, but it sounds like you're saying it's a balance, and it's really about where you're at.
Yeah, there's just so many different stories to be told about being in the army, about the military in general. There's just so many different experiences, and I think it's important that we like try and hear as many as possible, so that one doesn't become the dominant narrative. Right. And I think it's important to remember that like the military is just like it is an institution, but it's also just made up of people. And people are liquid, and people are fluid, and people are constantly changing, and so the military is constantly changing. You know, slow as it may be, it is changing.
And I think what would be great is, to your point of recruitment centers and stuff, if they, I don't know what I'm not here to fix the military. The U.S. Army, if you or Navy, whichever fucking thing, if y'all want to hire me to do a rebranding,
you want to be the PAO,
an outreach, like I'm great at that. I'm great at outreach strategies. So I just wished, like, I think about even us, or at least myself, when I was a kid and I first heard of LaGuardia, and it was like hearing about all these things, and it was kind of like, whoa, that's crazy. I didn't know about any of this, but there was an excitement about a space that was artistic. I wonder if there's a way that in recruitment we can talk about these other things that aren't just about fighting, because it then lends itself to my theory around how they poach our communities for the bodies to put on the front line. And so, but maybe I think that because I don't see them poaching for any other reason. I don't know these things to exist for any other reason except for signing them up and putting them in the front line. So I wonder what the army could do about that. Army, if you're listening.
No, that is something that's a really important, you know, because I see that conversation happening more and more online about like recruitment and recruitment tactics, you know, in poor Black and brown neighborhoods versus like recruitment tactics in white neighborhoods, or lack of recruitment tactics, you know, like what is our experience, you know, what do our first interactions look like with the military versus like what does you know, kid from Beverly Hills' interaction with the military look like, you know? It might be different, you know. And again, I think it's just really important that, you know, if we're so represented in, you know, the ranks that get put into like the really dangerous situations, you know, and I'm like, then we should have as much representation in the kind of plushy jobs, you know, and the kind of, you know. And most of the jobs in the military are not combat. Like that's something that I don't think a lot of people realize. Like most of the jobs are not combat related. You might be attached to a combat unit at some point, but you're not actually an infantry person, you know. So there's literally, I know this, one of our speaking points, there's 151 MOSs. There are 151 job options in the military, including mine. So I think just more knowledge about who we are, and, you know, what the options are. Just letting people know, like, we're here and we're something different.
Yes.
And you're serving this country, and we appreciate y'all.
Yes.
For the service that you do give. I'm really grateful that you came on here today to talk about this experience and shed some light.
Yes.
Lisa, where can we find you? Drop all the
you can
shout outs.
Yes, you can find me on the Instagrams. I am Django Jane. That's DJANGO Jane.Jibril, JIBRIL. Yeah, on Instagram, on Twitter, I'm at Jesus Christ, DIZUSCHRIST. I just started tweeting more, so I be tweeting sometimes too. You know.
Yeah, she got a Twitter. She be tweeting.
You be writing sometimes. I feel like Facebook is the closed like circle like group of people. Yeah. You be writing shit sometimes.
Too. I do. Yes, I'm on Facebook as well, and I'm I guess I could plug that. That's just my name, Adiza Jabril. So if you're cool, I tend to not accept a lot of strangers, but if you're cool,
oh yeah, oh no, I just
no,
you're a writer. Oh no, that wasn't me trying to get you to get followed. That was no, because you write sometimes. And
yes, definitely check out Vino and Grievances, your blog.
I was trying to get at.
I'm plugging myself also because I haven't written as much lately, and I really need to get back on top of it. But Vino and Grievances blog.com. That's where a lot of my writing lives, and I'm about to get back on top of it and start tip-tapping, typing fast again because my spirit needs it. You know.
Yes.
Skittles, where can they find us?
Yes, you guys can find us at Ladies Who Brunch on Instagram, Ladies Brunch on Twitter, Ladies Who Brunch on Facebook, at Julissa on Instagram, and at The Real Skittles with a Z at the end on Instagram from me. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. And until next time, don't check.